Hope you guys are ready for a really scary encounter. I've got Dee Dee with me, and while her and her husband were in their family cabin next to the Rocky Mountain National Park, they were terrorized for almost 4 days by some Bigfoot creatures that were around her cabin. These things did everything from throw rocks at them, scrape the side of their house. At one point in time, she saw a hand up against the window and eventually saw this creature out off of her back deck. Really scary stuff, and we're going to get into all that. But before I do, I just want to say thanks for being here. If you've got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into the story. Dee Dee, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's really great to be here, and I'm happy to be able to share our experiences.
Well, I'm excited to hear about it, so I know you got a lot to go into, so why don't you take us back where this happened in way out in the middle of nowhere next to the Rockies and just kind of walk us through this encounter.
Well, Rocky Mountain National Park is a real wild place. And so our cabin is not far from Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. So there were some fires going on in the park, and we decided that since everything was safe for us to go, we would go to the cabin. So it was July of 2021. And my husband and I, our Great Dane, and our Black Lab. So we got up to the cabin, and we were going to spend 3 days and 3 nights there. And so what happened is around 10:30 at night, the cabin was all quiet. We were asleep. Our dogs were asleep and snoring away. And all of a sudden, I heard what sounded like rocks getting thrown at the cabin. not little, and that was my husband, Peter. He had been to the cabin with me. And so not little pebbles, but big, hard rocks. And I woke up. He was very sound asleep. He sleeps like a rock. And he had medicine from his heart doctor that would make him sleep very soundly. So he was like a log asleep. And and I'm a light sleeper, so I was wide awake. And then I heard what sounded like a hand slapping our cabin. But the weird thing is, instantly I thought if anyone slapped the cabin that hard, they'd break the bones in their hand. That's how hard it was. And these were aggressive slaps and rocks. And our dogs, which are normally never afraid of anything, including bears. Where we live, we have a lot of bears that mosey around at after dark, and mountain lion, and they really bark it off, letting the animal know, this is my house, you can't come near. Well, up there at the cabin with these things going on, they huddled over to my side of the bed, and they were afraid and shivering. And so I thought, oh my gosh, what is out there? And I don't know why, but I never thought that it would be a Bigfoot. I just didn't think that. And so I was thinking, could there be some teenagers, or could there be somebody out there just trying to harass us? But here's our cabin out in the absolute nowhere, and there's nobody around. You have to get down there with four-wheel drive. There's a big locked gate. You can't get in. And so I just ruled that out right away. And so had mostly a sleepless night, our first night. And then I woke up the next morning looking around, and you can't see footprints out there because we have such a dense carpet of pine needles all over. So anything heavy is just going to squish down the pine needles, and then they bounce back up again. So I just, was hoping at least I'd find somebody's footprints out there. I still was thinking it was a crazy person. And in July, when you're at the 8,000 or so foot level of the Rockies, it gets cold at night. In the day, it's nice and warm, but it's cold at night. A person would not be out there from 10 or 10:30 until just as the rays of dawn are coming into the sky. That's a long time to be out there. So, not being able to find anything, I thought, well, I don't know what it was. We'll see what happens. And so that next night, it started again as soon as Peter and I were asleep in the cabin and the dogs were asleep. Everything was quiet. Then the rocks and the hand slapping started. And I thought, this is too much. So I ran out onto our deck. That's the one side of the cabin that has a motion light. And oh, by the way, the motion light had been going on and off the first night and then on the second night. And so I thought, what is going on? So I went out on the deck and I'm looking out into the lighted area. And of course, I can't see anything because it's all on the dark side of the cabin. And I'm not about to go on the dark side of the cabin to investigate. uh, so, anyway, I yelled out there and I thought, I've got to be fierce. I can't show that this is making me uneasy. So I yelled out into the dark, who's doing this? Stop it. You're trespassing. Get out of here. And um, we can't get any sleep. And so I came back into the cabin, and for about a half hour it was quiet. And then I'd no sooner fallen asleep again than this started up again. And I was really, really uneasy about it. And then we have a window that is 7 feet off the ground above our headboard. And oh, yeah, everything was happening on the side of the cabin, which was opposite our headboard, right next to our headboard. So whatever was out there knew where we were. And so all of a sudden, this hand or paw came up and smacked the window really hard up above the bed, but it's 7 feet off the ground. And I'm thinking, who or what can do this? And so I ran out again, and this time I said, I have my gun, and I'm going to shoot it. I didn't say I was going to shoot it at anybody, but I said, I'm going to shoot it if you don't leave us alone. And so again, everything was quiet for a while until we fell asleep. And then the barrage of noise started, but this time I could hear two really odd sounding voices. And I used to take my grandkids when they were little to the zoo all the time, Joshua. And so our grandkids loved the primate section. So we got pretty familiar with the primates. So anyway, all of a sudden I could hear this gobbledygook. It was two different voices, but they were deep voices, like they had a lot of lung power. And it was, I mean, this is going to sound silly, but it was kind of like, woo, 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 woo. And, but it was, it sounded like definite sounds, definite, if you could call it words, I don't know. But one was speaking and the other one was speaking. And it was just on the other side of the cabin, and that kind of freaked me out. And so the last night I was out there, and all the while this was happening, Peter was stirring. He was not sleeping soundly, but I was not going to tell him about it because he had had two serious heart surgeries not long before that, and I wanted him to get his sleep. So, oh my gosh. So the last night, the rocks and the um, slapping happened, but no hand above the bed on the closed window. But I did hear the voices again, these two voices, and Peter jumped out of bed when this horrendous, loud, it was like a shriek or a scrape just went down the side of the cabin. So loud. And I thought, what can make that sound? It's not a human hand, but it sounded like it had long fingernails or something. And it was so loud, it woke him out of his sleep. And he jumped out of bed in his undies and ran out on the deck and started shouting out there as if it was a person to get out of here, to leave immediately. They're trespassing. And so then he went back to bed. He fell back asleep. And we kind of mentioned to each other, no human hand could do that. What was that? And so I go out and I've got my gun this time and I shoot it straight out at the river because I know there's nothing out there, just bushes and the water. So I shot it out at the river and I noticed from the corner of my eye, I could see these arms just jiggle like this. Long arms, and they were all the way down to knees. The hands were down by the knees, and I thought, that is a huge monkey. That looks like a huge ape. And this thing was behind a narrow tree, as if the tree was hiding it. The tree wasn't hiding it. And I mean, this thing was so big and so wide, it made that football player Refrigerator Perry, if you've heard of him before, it made him look as if he was dinky. That's how big this thing was. And and I mean, it freaked me out because I looked over there and it was a reddish brown color from head to toe. It had a pointed head. And I thought, I've got to remember where that point is on the tree because I want to measure it the next morning. And so I just kind of logged it into my head where it was on the tree. And I was thinking in a New York minute, that thing could come over that fast and take me out. That's how big it is. And it was about 30 to 35 feet away from the cabin. But I could not smell anything because there was no wind. There was no breeze. And while I was out there, I didn't smell anything. And so, um, anyway, I just knew right away that is not a person in that suit. You could see the musculature, you could see the muscles in the arms, and you could see the hands and how it just shook like this when I shot the gun off in the opposite direction. And oh my gosh, um, it really freaked me out. But I thought, I've got to use my animal training techniques because to show that I'm not afraid, and I have to show that I'm the alpha person here. And so I've trained dogs all my life, and I helped train horses. Our kids and I trained our horses, and I used the Monty Roberts horse techniques to train them. And it's training them with gentleness and love, but you show that you're the alpha. You have to be the alpha. So I'm stomping on the deck and I'm yelling at the top of my lungs and trying to act really, really fierce. And this thing just kept staring at me. And I thought, I can't lose eye contact. So, so I thought, I backed up, went back in the cabin, slammed the door and locked it really good. And for the rest of the night, it was quiet. Oh my gosh. And so Peter and I just decided we're going to leave right away in the morning instead of staying and fishing and so forth. So um, anyway, we packed up and left, and still there were no um, footprints or anything, no hair that I could see left around. But I measured on the tree, and that was 7 foot 7 inches tall. So It was crazy.
Dee Dee, first off, I got to say, man, you are an extremely brave person to have the mindset to do what you did, and thank goodness for your training that you had. And there's a lot to go into, but one of the first things I like to ask people is, how did that encounter affect your life?
Well, I can't stop reading about them and watching wonderful podcasts like yours, um, just to learn as much as I can about it and hear what other people have gone through. And Joshua, since I started being brave and telling my friends about it, they opened up and they've been telling me encounters that they've had in the Colorado Rockies. Oh my gosh. And I thought, wow, I'm not the only one. And the more I heard, the braver I got.
That's generally how that works, and it does take a lot of guts to come forward with this stuff because I remember the first time I shared my encounter, some of the looks I got from family members. So, but it makes you wonder how many people are sitting on these encounters, and they are life-changing encounters. But when when all this stuff was going on, and I'm sure there's a lot of things racing through your mind, but when you saw that hand come up, and slap the window, did you get any details? Were you able to see much, or did it happen really fast? Kind of describe that.
Yeah. Now, see, as a former teacher of 30 years, you've got to watch for details. And when you're teaching high schoolers and middle schoolers, God bless them, you want to be real careful with details on for many situations. But anyway, yeah. So this thing had the hand. It was way bigger than my hand. It was long, and the thumb was not where a human hand is. It was down, like what a primate hand looks like. And the inside of the hand looked like a primate hand. I'd seen them put their hands on the glass over at the zoo, and the Denver Zoo has an awesome primate exhibit. But I mean, it's a wonderful zoo. But I often saw those hands, and it looked just like it, except it was way bigger. And I was thinking, that thing can come right through my window. I have to be brave. I have to show that I'm alpha. And so, anyway, oh, I was going to tell you too that so we didn't have anything more happen the day we left, and this was back in 2021. And we figured that the fires in Rocky Mountain National Park had driven them down. That's what my husband and I figured out. That that must have they lost their habitat. And so the next year, we thought we're not going to be afraid to go back to our cabin. This is our family cabin. So we went back up there, and I had fallen asleep with the dogs on their. They always have to be on their leash when they are outside in the wild. So I've got them on the leash, and I just fell asleep on the deck listening to the water go by. It was so nice and idyllic, and all of a sudden I woke right up just like that, feeling like something was watching me, and it was a creepy feeling. And so I looked across the river, and these big, thick bushes were just going like this. And I thought, what is that? No, there's no wind blowing. Why is it doing that? And all of a sudden, I heard three whistles. It was low, high. I mean, I can't even do it. It was kind of like, see, I can't, I can't do it now. My whistle is not working. But it was low, high, low, high, low, high. And the first one sounded like it came from a big, huge Sasquatch. And the second one, it sounded like it came from an adult, but not as big. And then the third one was a little whistle. And I thought, oh, it's kind of like Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear. But it wasn't, they weren't bears. They were Bigfoot in there. I didn't see them. But and I forgot to tell you, in 2021, I saw the red eye shine looking back at me. I couldn't see the face because of the pine branches, but the red eye shine, and there was a space between those eyes that showed it had to be a big face. And but I did see the shoulders, and you couldn't see a neck. It was like came down, and you could see all the reddish brown hair all the way to the ground. And I couldn't see the abdomen or the legs, but I could see the the um I couldn't see the inner part of the legs. I could see the outer part of the legs and these massive shoulders. Holy moly. But back to 2022. So my husband was on the other side of the cabin cutting wood. So he's got, you know, earplugs in. He's not going to hear anything. So then I thought, I'm going to whistle back at him. So they whistled back at me. And then I heard some tree knocks. And so I got a piece of wood and knocked the railing on our deck, and it knocked back, and all of a sudden I just got this really creepy feeling. And so we dashed back into the cabin, and it was you know it's still when I'm telling you about this, I just feel like a bowl of jello inside. I mean, it still makes the hair on my arms just stand up, because you're so vulnerable as a person out there. I mean, even though you've got your firearms, so you're actually hopefully on the top of the food chain. But I had heard this wonderful, wonderful um, video, and it was back in 2015, and it was an interview of park ranger officials. And it was also an interview of different people in the Washington State communities and in Oregon communities, but mostly it was police officers, and it was also high up officials in the Bureau of Land Management and in Fish and Game. And oh my gosh, if I could find this video, I've searched and searched for it on YouTube, but I have not found it yet. But I know it's out there. But as soon when I turned on the TV, there was this video, and this man, you could see the faces were not blotted out. Well, one or two had their faces blotted out and their badges covered, but the rest of them, they were showing their face. They were showing their badges. And this man had said, when you see these animals, I'll never forget what he said. Do not approach them. They are not your friends. Do not try to pet them. And he said, when you see them, walk backwards. Do not look them in the eyes, because that is a challenge. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's not even alluding to the fact that they might be there. He's just coming right out and saying it. Oh my goodness. And then he said, walk backwards, and then when you feel like you're far enough away, safe enough, then turn around and walk away. But he said, don't even try to run, they'll outdistance you. And he said, you're a lot easier to catch than a deer. And I thought, oh my gosh.
Those are some good points. And I think a lot of times people don't really know or understand how big these things are until you see one. I think you made a smart decision by running back into the cabin that day. And I think they're extremely territorial. And, I think about a lot of these people, that sometimes they'll see one, and I guarantee you if there's one out there, there's another one really close by. I think they run in packs. They're very territorial. But well, since that time, have you been back and have you seen anything else, or has anything happened since those two incidences?
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. Um, this is so weird. So, so yeah, so I saw this on 2015, on the TV, and um, so I kind of put it in the back of my head because we lived in beautiful Golden, Colorado at the time, and I would hear these really weird sounds coming off the mesa. Um, there's two mesas in Golden, and we were across from North Table Mountain, and it was really wild when we lived there. And not a lot of homes and everything around us, but our horses would go nuts when they would hear these. It was like a combination of a howl, scream, and a yell all in one sound. So weird and so inhuman. And then you'd hear coyotes go off, and then you'd hear the sound of a deer screaming, and then everything would be quiet. But our horses would go crazy, and I'd have to run out there all hours of the wee hours of the morning to calm them down. And so, um, since the 2022 and 2021, um, we have had slaps on our house where we live, and we live in the mountains, about the 8,000 foot level and of the Rockies. And um, I have only heard the vocalizations one time um, in the woods um, near our house. But one morning I woke up and we had a really strong chain link fence that was put up properly. And those are strong fences, and with big metal support poles and done right. And it was fencing off um, a wealthy person's huge acreage near us. And so the next morning, I wake up, I'm out walking the dogs, and this was last year, 2024, and in the fall, and I see this massive tree has been pulled out of the ground. And I mean, this thing had to be about this big around. What's that, about 12 inches in diameter, would you think? Yeah. So, um, and I mean, just boom, it just was, it was pulled out of the ground. It was laying across the chain link fence, which also had a kind of a very sharp barbed wire. And so it was like it was making a bridge across it. And, oh, I asked neighbors when I saw that, did you hear any equipment come and pull this tree out, or do you know what happened? And the neighbors I spoke to said that happened to see it. Not all of my neighbors. I don't know if all my neighbors actually saw it, but uh, the person that owned the property, I think, came along and had the massive tree cut down and moved, but he didn't do it. And wow, and I have seen big footprints in the snow coming down the slope across from our house and in the woods. It's a big wooded area, lots of deer, lots of water, and so I have seen big footprints in the snow that I measured. One was one set of footprints was 15 inches, the footprints, but um, they were about 5 feet in between the footprints, and it had five toes, but it didn't look like. I mean, it wasn't a human foot. And then I've seen bigger footprints in the snow, bigger than that. But if we don't have snow to have the footprints show up, the pine needles don't show up. The footprints.
They're definitely all in that region. You know, you get reports from there a lot of the times. I mean, you know, the Rocky Mountain area is just such a vast region. It's hard to put into words how, you know, how rural that is and how much land mass is out there. There's plenty of places for them to be, but you know, I know that your encounters were pretty scary, you know, because that could have went south really fast. And I think you're fortunate to be here to share, you know, these encounters, especially from the cabin. But, you know, if you had the opportunity to see one again, would you want to?
Yes and no, because Dang, that thing is scary. It's really scary. Oh my gosh. But I want my husband to see it because I told him, I said, when we go up to the cabin again, I said, I'm waking you up when this happens because I want you to see this. And he says, well, I don't know if I want to see that.
It's kind of a loaded question because it's like, on one hand, you want to see it again, but the other hand, it's like, I don't know. These things are, they can be pretty scary. And, it's a strange world. There's a lot of things out there we don't understand. And this is kind of the $1 million question that all of us want to know. And, everybody has their own thoughts and opinions. But I would love, just because I like to hear everybody's thoughts, but, what do you think these things are?
I definitely, from seeing it, I absolutely don't have a question in my mind that it looks just like the artist rendition of the great apes that once were on the planet, but I think they still are. I mean, look at you. You've got the Yeti. You know, you've got the Sasquatch. In here in Colorado, the Sasquatch Range. That was the Indian name for Sasquatch here in Colorado. And then, you've got the Sasquatch and you got the hairy man. And oh my gosh, I was so surprised that Lewis and Clark have mentions of the hairy man and that Davy Crockett had an encounter with them. And a lot of the American Indian tribes, they all have names for it. And it kind of translates as a hairy man because, I mean, these guys had never seen primates before. They didn't even know primates existed. So, what are you going to call it? And the big, hairy, stinky creature that scares you half to death. But so we figured out that the reason, and I had also contacted Matt Moneymaker from BFRO, and what a very kind, nice person he is to talk to and to give me, the time of day. But because he's so busy, but it was so great to be able to bounce off some questions from him with all his experience too. But he said he thought the reason that they had come down from Rocky Mountain National Park area was because of the fact that the fires were going on. And he thought they were being aggressive because they wanted to take our land for theirs.
That makes a lot of sense. These things, in my opinion, are extremely territorial. You hear cases all the time where they pace people out, and different things like that. And I mean, I think sometimes some of these missing 411 people are related to these cryptids, but most of the time, these encounters, they're running people out of places because they're territorial, and that makes a lot of sense to me. But I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that encounter. I know it's not an easy thing to talk about, and if something ever happens in the future, I would really love to hear about it.
Oh yeah. Well, if I could tell you one more thing, um, so when I was listening to that bunch of interviews that they did back in 2015, um, the one I'm still looking for to find it. Um, I was so amazed when some of these guys said, we know what mountain lion kills look like. And I do too, because we've lived in Colorado for most our life and seen things. And we know what bear kills look like. But they said, um, we also know what Bigfoot kills look like. And I remembered all those animals in our area. I mean, a huge elk, a huge full grown elk, can't that weigh close to 1,000 pounds? A full grown elk? I mean, some of those here in Colorado, Joshua, they're as big as a good sized horse. And we found these things cracked in half. What? What's going to do that? You know? And so I think it's always a good thing when you're going camping, um, or you're going to a family cabin or something. Always make sure you're armed. For at least one thing, you can make a noise and scare them away. I mean, my guns would not have taken down a Bigfoot, but my husband's rifles would have done it if we'd had to. We wouldn't have wanted to, but when it came to push or shove, defending your life, of course.
Well, that's some good, solid advice. People need to be careful when they're out in the woods like that. That's part of the reasons I do this show, because I want people to be aware that things they're real and they're out there, and hopefully maybe we're saving some lives and making people aware. But again, thanks for coming on the show. If you see some of the future, please let me know. I really, really enjoyed that. I know my audience did too. Guys, thanks for hanging out with me and Dee Dee today. That was an incredible encounter. And it does take a lot of guts to come forward to share this kind of stuff. And so I really appreciate everybody that comes on and sends me their encounters and just comes on the show and shares these encounters with you. And I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. And there's a lot of strange things in God's universe we don't understand. And in my opinion, she's really fortunate to be here to share these encounters. But guys, I'm so grateful to be able to do this. Thanks for hanging out with me again. And I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to say it. Stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.